"You're gonna have sex with me," said the virgin we discovered in his abandoned rancher.
I cannot bear this uncertainty another day, Josiah. You must choose, the ranch or me.
It's always been you, Eliza. Only you.
The sun had barely begun to touch the jagged peaks when he rode deeper into the valley. The wind biting through his coat, carrying the sharp scent of pine and cold earth. The abandoned ranch loomed ahead like a sentinel from another time, its weathered boards groaning under their own weight, the chimney leaning like it had secrets it refused to share. He had heard stories of this place from the townsfolk's strange lights at night. Whispers of women who vanished, and shadows moving behind shuttered windows. But he had never believed in ghost stories. Not until today. The gate creaked under his touch, rusted and stubborn, and he pushed it open with a shove that echoed through the empty courtyard. Each step he took inside the main house made the floor moan beneath his boots, the sound swallowing itself in the wide, empty halls. Dust hung in the air, motes dancing like tiny fireflies in the pale morning light that slanted through cracked windows. The air smelled of earth and decay, and yet, beneath it, a faint trace of something else lingered: cooked bread, sweet and lingering. Like a memory that refused to fade, he ran a hand over the back of his neck, muscles tense. The place had been abandoned for years, maybe decades, yet something about it felt alive. There were signs of recent habitation, small things that made his pulse quicken: a mug left on the counter, footprints in the dust, a blanket draped across a chair as though someone had just gotten up. His eyes caught movement in the corner of the room, and he spun, heart hammering, only to find a shadow melting into the wall. A soft voice broke the stillness. It was low, hesitant, but carried a strength that startled him. "You shouldn't be here." He froze, gripping the edge of the wooden table to steady himself. The voice belonged to a woman, young, but there was an old-world hardness in it. The kind born of surviving storms that would have broken lesser souls. From the shadows emerged a figure, her posture rigid yet unafraid, eyes bright and unflinching. Her hair, dark as the mountain soil, framed a face that could have been carved from granite, beautiful, dangerous, and impossibly determined. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice rough from days in the saddle. She stepped closer, each movement measured, deliberate. "I live here. Or at least I have been." Her eyes narrowed, taking him in with the kind of scrutiny that made him feel both exposed and caught in a trap he could not escape. "And you've stumbled into something you weren't ready for." The words pricked at his pride, but he could not turn away. There was something about her presence that demanded attention, an unspoken power that rooted him to the floor. "I'm just checking the place out," he said, trying to sound casual. Though the tremor in his voice betrayed him, she tilted her head, a ghost of a smile brushing her lips. "This is not just a house. It is a story. A story that doesn't welcome outsiders, Lee and you. You have the look of someone who wants to uncover it anyway." The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating more of the interior. Dust motes glittered like trapped stars. And he noticed there were more of them, women 3 in total, each carrying the same aura of fierce independence, yet with a quiet, hidden vulnerability. They stood in a semicircle, their eyes fixed on him, calculating, assessing. He sensed he had walked into something far larger than a simple abandoned ranch. There were hierarchies here, rules he didn't yet understand, and a history he had only begun to touch. "You're alone?" he asked cautiously, aware that even speaking might provoke them. One of the women, her hair like burnished copper, stepped forward. Her gaze was direct, unyielding, so she had carried the weight of her life on her shoulders and could not afford weakness. "Alone?" she echoed, voice sharp. "No one is ever truly alone here. Not if you breathe the same air. Not if your presence stirs the past." The word sent a chill down his spine. He realized this was not just about trespassing, or even curiosity. He had come looking for an empty ranch, a place to lay claim to something that was his by law. And yet he had stumbled into a story older than the mountains themselves. He tried to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he glanced around the room, taking in the remnants of life that seemed to defy abandonment. Quilts folded with meticulous care, Dishes stacked neatly, though, untouched for years. A stack of journals tied with faded leather straps. Whoever had lived here, or was still living here, had done so with purpose. With an eye toward permanence, the dark-haired woman took a step closer. Her presence was magnetic, drawing him forward even as every instinct told him to retreat. "There are rules," she said softly, almost a whisper, but it carried. "Rules that outsiders break without knowing. And consequences." Her eyes darkened. "Consequences that cannot be undone." He swallowed hard. He had heard warnings about the mountains, about the old ranches abandoned when the world moved on. Stories of those who entered and never returned, or returned changed, silent, carrying secrets they would not speak aloud. But he had never imagined that a place could hold its inhabitants in such a way, could command them with nothing but presence and history. Another woman, tall and stern, her skin bronzed by years of mountain sun, stepped forward. She held a carved wooden staff, not for defense, but as a symbol, he guessed, of authority. "You came here for land," she said, voice calm but firm. "But land is not always what it seems. Here, every stone, every tree, every wall remembers. And it watches. You are being watched." The last of the three, younger, with eyes that gleamed like polished amber, lingered at the edge of the group. Her gaze flicked between him and the others, hesitant but aware. "You think you understand," she said quietly, "but understanding comes after listening, after learning. And learning is not given lightly." He felt the weight of their scrutiny press on him like the mountain itself. It was both suffocating and electrifying, an invisible tether binding him to the dusty floorboards and the secrets hidden behind them. His heart raced, but not entirely in fear. Curiosity, stubbornness, and a strange pull of destiny kept him rooted. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said, though the words felt hollow. They would not believe him. He could feel it. The house, the women, the very air seemed to hum with tension, waiting, holding back revelations he could not yet grasp. The dark-haired woman's lips curled into a faint smile, almost imperceptible. "Intentions matter little here," she said. "Actions. Actions matter. And you have acted, just by coming." A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, sending a shiver through the room. Dust swirled like spirits in the sunlight. And he caught a glimpse of movement upstairs, shadows flickering behind a cracked door, a presence he could not yet name. His pulse quickened. The women were not the only mystery here. Something else lingered, something older, waiting, watching, shaping the boundaries he had crossed without even knowing. The silence stretched, thick and expectant. Every heartbeat seemed to echo, amplified by the empty walls and the weight of unspoken stories. And then the dark-haired woman spoke again, voice low but certain. "If you stay, if you truly wish to stay, everything you think you know about yourself, about the world, will be challenged. Every choice will have meaning, every step a consequence. And there are those who will not forgive mistakes." He swallowed, mind racing. There was no turning back now. The abandoned ranch was no longer empty. The mountains had claimed it, the women had claimed it, and in some way, he felt, he was already part of a story far larger than himself, a story that would demand courage, cunning, and perhaps a sacrifice he could not yet understand. The sun climbed higher. The wind outside carried with it the scent of pine, earth, and smoke from distant fires. Somewhere beyond the trees, the mountains waited, silent and unyielding. And inside the old ranch, a fragile tension stretched across the room like a drawn bowstring, ready to snap with the next word, the next move, the next secret revealed. He realized, with a mix of dread and anticipation, that nothing here would ever be simple, nothing safe, and nothing predictable. And as he met the eyes of the three women again, he knew the true test was only beginning. The floorboards creaked beneath him. Somewhere above, a door shifted. A shadow peered from the darkness. The ranch held its secrets close, but they would not remain hidden for long. And he had just become part of them. He woke before dawn the next morning, chill of the mountain air seeping through the thin walls of the abandoned ranch. Sleep had been elusive, tangled with visions of shadowed halls, whispered voices, and the steady, unblinking gaze of the women who had claimed the place as their own. He rose quietly, boots brushing the worn wooden floorboards, and made his way to the kitchen, where the faint smell of burning wood and fresh herbs lingered, though no fire burned and no one appeared. Outside, the first light of day struck the mountains with a pale gold, illuminating jagged cliffs and narrow passes where snow still clung stubbornly. He wondered how such beauty could coexist with the weight of dread and mystery. He felt pressing against him like a storm cloud ready to break. His thoughts drifted to the women, dark-haired, stern, and young Amber Reed. They were not merely guardians of this old ranch, they were something more. Something that had grown from the soil itself, shaped by isolation, secrecy, and history, too tangled to name. A sound drew him toward the barn, a soft shuffle that might have been wind, might have been something alive. The doors were cracked and weathered, swinging slightly in the morning breeze. As he pushed one open, he noticed the floor was scattered with hay, footprints too small to be his own. And there, half hidden in the shadows, stood the youngest of the women, her amber eyes catching the sun like fire. She did not speak, but the way she watched him carried a message clear enough. He was being tested, observed, measured against some unspoken standard. The dark-haired woman appeared behind him without a sound, her presence suddenly filling the space with authority and quiet command. "Curiosity can be dangerous here," she said. Her voice was calm, yet it carried a weight that made him instinctively straighten his posture. "This place, it holds more than land. It holds choices, and choices have consequences you may not understand." He tried to meet her gaze evenly, though unease clawed at his chest. "I want to understand," he said, meaning it. And yet, he felt how inadequate the words sounded against the magnitude of what he had stumbled into. "You think understanding comes from knowing names? Dates and walls," the dark-haired woman said. Stepping closer, "It does not. It comes from knowing people. And the people here, they are not easy to know. Not if you do not respect what binds them." She gestured toward the barn, toward the shadows of the mountains beyond. "They have survived storms, hunger, and loss that would break most men. You may not be ready for what that means." Her words sank into him like stones in cold water. He had survived his own hardships, strails lost in snow, cattle stolen by rustlers, nights under stars so cold they stole breath from his lungs. But this, whatever this was, seemed beyond anything he had encountered. He glanced around. The ranch was not abandoned. It was alive with history, with memory, the quiet resistance that stretched back decades. The tallest woman, bronzed and severe, appeared at the barn entrance as if summoned by the wind. "We have our routines," she said, voice firm. "We do not share our space lightly. Outsiders rarely last more than a night." Her gaze scanned him as though she could read his very bones. "And yet, you remain." The amber-eyed girl stepped forward, hesitant but bold. "He must be watched," she said quietly to the dark-haired woman, her tone reverent. "We cannot risk him alone." Her eyes flicked toward him, then back to the shadowed loft above, where the creaking floorboards suggested someone or something was moving. "There are others," he stiffened, heart quickening. "Others?" The dark-haired woman's lips tightened. "This ranch does not belong only to the three of us. There are rules older than memory, and there are forces, unseen, waiting for those who wander too far, too fast, too boldly." Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to ride back down the mountain and return to the safety of open plains. But curiosity, stubbornness, and an unnameable pull kept him rooted. He had come seeking a new life, land to call his own, and yet the ranch seemed to call him for reasons he could not yet comprehend. The next few days were a careful dance of observation. He explored the house and barns, finding traces of the women's lives, knitting, journals, tools meticulously arranged, dried herbs tied in bundles, and scraps of paper with cryptic notes. He discovered that the place had once been prosperous, then abandoned after a fire and rumors of tragedy. Yet despite the decay, there were signs of recent care. Small acts of order that seemed almost ritualistic. Each morning, the dark-haired woman would appear, guiding him subtly, never fully explaining. leaving him to piece together fragments of their lives. The copper-haired woman taught him how to read the signs of the land, how the wind shifted before storms, how to find water in rocky soil, how to move without disturbing the mountain's quiet balance. The youngest girl stayed mostly in the shadows, watching, learning, and teaching in silence, her amber eyes observing everything he did, cataloging it in a way that made him feel both scrutinized and strangely protected. Tension grew with every passing hour. He noticed small things at first glances exchanged between the women. Whispers that stopped the moment he entered a room, the way the shadows seemed to linger longer than natural. And then there were the noises from the loft above, soft footsteps, the creak of floorboards, the faint thud of objects moved when no one appeared in sight. Whatever lived there had made itself part of the house, as natural as the walls themselves. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and bathed the valley in golden shadow, he approached the dark-haired woman with a question that had haunted him since the moment he arrived. "Why are you here? Why stay in a place that scares everyone away?" She paused, gaze fixed on the horizon where the mountains met the sky. "Because it is ours," she said simply. "Because we know its secrets, because we have earned the right to endure. This place is alive, and it protects those who respect it. It punishes those who do not, and it tests those who enter without permission." The wind whispered through the cracks in the walls, carrying with it the faint scent of pine, earth, and smoke from fires long extinguished. He shivered, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon him, and wondered how many had come here before, drawn by greed, curiosity, or desperation, and how few had left unchanged. The copper-haired woman appeared beside him then, silent as the mountain shadows. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked. "The pull of this land, this house. It is not merely brick and timber. It is memory, survival, power, and it will not let you go easily." He nodded, unable to speak, aware that every choice, every step he took in that house was already a part of something larger than himself. A storm was coming. He could feel it in the air, in the tension that threaded through the women, the house, the very mountain itself. And he realized that the ranch, and those who guarded it, were not merely obstacles to his plans. They were the conflict itself, the challenge he had yet to face. That night, he lay awake on a cot in the corner of the main room, listening to the wind rattling the windows and the occasional creak of the loft above. The house seemed to breathe with him, the shadows shifting, waiting. Every door, every window, every dusty corner held a story he had not yet uncovered, a secret that could change everything. He knew he could not turn back, not without risking what little peace he still held in his mind. And somewhere in the darkness, the amber-eyed girl's gaze followed him, silent, unreadable, as if she could see into his very soul. The mountains loomed, the ranch waited, and the women's eyes held him in a balance between trust and judgment. The conflict was no longer outside, it was inside him, in the questions he could not yet answer, in the choices he had yet to make. The wind outside rose higher, carrying with it a warning that he could not ignore. The ranch would not yield its secrets easily, and in the heart of the house, the shadows shifted once more, hinting that the story had only just begun, that every day forward would pull him deeper into a world both beautiful and dangerous, a world where the stakes were life, memory, and the fragile threads of trust he had yet to earn. And in that tense silence, he realized the true danger of the ranch. It did not need to act to harm him. Its presence, its history, and the women who guarded it could unravel everything he thought he knew if he were not careful. And even as he breathed the cold mountain air, he knew the first confrontation, the first true test, was waiting just beyond the door, just beyond the next shadow, just beyond the line he had already crossed without knowing it. The wind tore through the valley that evening, rattling the shutters and tugging at the edges of the tattered curtains in the main house. Darkness settled over the mountains, thick and heavy, and shadows stretched long across the worn floorboards. He moved cautiously, boots silent on the boards, heart thrumming in his chest, aware that every sound carried farther than it should in the still air. The ranch had grown more alive in his absence, as though it had been holding its breath for him, waiting for some choice, some action that would test him completely. He found the dark-haired woman standing by the fireplace, her figure lit by the dying embers that glowed red against the cold stone. Her posture was rigid, commanding, and yet there was a flicker of something unspoken in her eyes. Warning, concern, perhaps even care. She did not turn as he approached. "The storm is coming," she said simply, voice calm but taut with meaning. "And storms do not wait for preparation," he nodded, though uncertainty twisted in his gut. "I'm ready," he said. But even as the words left his lips, he realized they were hollow. Nothing in this place could be faced with preparation alone. The ranch demanded more attentiveness, courage, and a willingness to face the unknown. The youngest of the women appeared then, her amber eyes sharp in the firelight, carrying a small lantern. She moved with a silence that seemed unnatural, almost like she glided across the floor rather than walked. "You should not go outside tonight," she said quietly. "There are things in the mountains, things that test who enters, who stays." Her gaze flicked to the loft above, and he followed it, noting the faint shadow that shifted beyond the cracked door. "They will not forgive mistakes." His chest tightened. The stories the townsfolk whispered suddenly made sense. The missing travelers, the vanished wanderers, the warnings long dismissed as superstition. He had come seeking land, a new life, and maybe adventure. But now he understood that the ranch was alive with memory, with rules, with consequences. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind, carried a warning he could no longer ignore. The copper-haired woman joined them, holding a bundle of herbs tied in faded string. She placed it carefully on the table, the fragrant scent cutting through the damp chill. "The land remembers," she said, voice firm but softer than usual. "And those who live here carry its weight. Every act matters. Every decision can awaken what sleeps beneath." He realized then that the ranch was not merely a place, it was a living entity, one that demanded respect and understanding. It had allowed him entrance, but acceptance was a far different thing. He felt the pull of the house, the mountains, the women themselves, and he knew that the coming night would be the first true test of everything he had learned, everything he had survived. The evening deepened, shadows lengthening until the corners of the room seemed to pulse with life. A distant rumble of thunder rolled across the mountains, low and ominous, echoing through the valley. The women gathered in silence, their movements precise, deliberate, as though they had anticipated every possibility. The dark-haired woman met his gaze again. "Do you trust what you do not understand?" she asked softly, yet with undeniable weight. He hesitated. Trust was not a word he used lightly. Yet in the shadowed intensity of their presence, in the weight of the house around him, he realized there was no other choice. "I will," he said finally. The youngest girl shifted, lantern light glinting in her eyes. "Then you must follow," she said. She moved toward the door, and the others fell into line behind her. The wind outside had grown fiercer, whipping through the trees, bending branches toward the house as though the mountains themselves were reaching in. He stepped after them, boots crunching against gravel and frost, heart pounding in time with the rising storm. The air outside was sharp, cold, carrying the scent of pine, wet earth, and a distant fire. The mountains loomed around them, jagged peaks disappearing into low-hanging clouds. The women moved with ease, unhesitant, as if they belonged to this land in a way he never could. He followed, careful to match their pace, aware that the night held dangers he could neither see nor predict. As they reached the edge of the clearing, the youngest girl paused. Her eyes scanned the darkness beyond the trees. "It watches," she said, voice barely audible over the wind. "It tests. It waits for fear, for doubt, for hesitation. If you falter, you will not return the same." The dark-haired woman stepped beside her, hand resting lightly on the girl's shoulder. "We all face it," she said. "Not just you. Not just him. It is part of the mountain, part of the ranch, part of us. And tonight, it will decide if we endure or if we fall." He swallowed hard. He had faced many dangers before: storms, bandits, fire, but nothing had prepared him for this. It was not merely the wilderness he feared. It was the weight of history, the memory of lives carved into these walls, and the living presence of the women who commanded it with quiet strength. Every instinct screamed that the coming hours would shape not just his fate, but theirs as well. The storm broke with sudden fury, wind lashing branches against the house and rain hammering the roof like a drum. Thunder rolled across the valley, closer now, shaking the ground beneath them. Lightning illuminated the mountains in stark flashes, revealing paths and cliffs, shadows and hidden hollows. In that brief light, he saw movement in the tree swarms that shifted too quickly, too deliberately to be animals. The land itself seemed alive, testing their resolve, challenging every step. The women paused at the edge of a small ravine, eyes scanning the darkness. "It begins here," the dark-haired woman said, voice steady despite the storm. "The first test. The first truth. Do you understand what you risk?" He nodded, though his chest tightened with fear and anticipation. He did understand. He was risking more than life or comfort. He was stepping into the heart of a mystery, older than any town story, older than the mountains themselves. And yet some deep, stubborn part of him refused to turn back. The youngest girl led the way, moving with uncanny surety across the slick, rain-soaked rocks. Every step was careful, deliberate, and yet the shadows pressed closer, twisting and shifting as if alive. The copper-haired woman followed, chanting softly under her breath, a rhythm that seemed to stabilize the air around them. Warding off the unknown that stirred beyond sight, lightning struck a distant peak, illuminating a figure or many figures watching from the tree line. He blinked, heart hammering, unsure if he had imagined them. But the women did not flinch. They moved forward, unwavering, as though the unseen watchers had no power against them. He realized then that strength here was not measured by force, but by presence, by courage, by the ability to face the mountain's judgment without flinching. The path narrowed as they ascended. Wind tearing at coats and hair, rain soaking boots and sleeves. Every step was a test of endurance, balance, and courage. He stumbled once, nearly falling into the dark ravine below. The dark-haired woman's hand caught his arm, steadying him with surprising strength. "Do not falter," she said. "Not yet. Everything depends on this night." As they reached a plateau, the storm seemed to pause, a tense silence falling over the valley. The mountains loomed like silent judges, and the shadows of the trees stretched like fingers toward them. In that quiet, he sensed the culmination of every warning, every glance, every whispered word. This was the point where courage would meet challenge, where trust would meet fear, where the weight of the past would meet the promise of what was to come. The youngest girl pointed toward a cave entrance, hidden behind jagged rocks and twisted roots. "Inside," she said, "everything begins here. Do not look back." He followed, heart racing, every muscle taut. The dark-haired woman and the copper-haired woman flanked him, guiding, guarding, and watching. The cave was dark, the air thick and damp, carrying the scent of earth, moss, and something older, deeper. He could feel it pressing against him, demanding recognition, demanding courage, demanding choice. And in that darkness, he realized the truth. The climax was not merely a confrontation with the unknown, the mountain, or even the ranch itself. It was the confrontation with himself, the fear, the doubt, the hesitation he had carried all his life. Everything he had learned, everything he had endured, led to this moment. And as the women waited beside him, shadows flickering in the lantern light, he understood that the night would decide more than survival. It would decide destiny. The storm raged outside. The cave walls seemed to close in, and the shadows moved closer, pressing against every sense. He drew a deep breath, steadying himself, knowing that the next moments would test every ounce of resolve he possessed. Every heartbeat, every step, every glance mattered. And in that tension, he felt at the sharp edge of anticipation, the thrill of uncertainty, the pull of something powerful and transformative just beyond reach. He did not know what awaited them in the darkness, but he knew it would not be easy. The ranch, the mountains, the women, and the history that clung to every stone and timber, everything was aligned for the test. And as the first rumble of thunder shook the plateau and lightning lit the cave entrance, he stepped forward. Knowing the climax of this night, this storm, and this journey was about to begin. The cave swallowed them in darkness. But he moved forward with the women close behind. Every step measured, careful, and deliberate. The wind from outside screamed through the mountain passes, rattling rocks and shaking loose branches, but inside the air was thick, warm, and alive with memory. Every sound echoed footsteps, breathing, and the faintest whisper of voices long gone. He could feel it, the pulse of the land, the history of the ranch, and the presence of those who had walked these halls and fields before. The dark-haired woman paused and placed a hand on the rough stone wall. "Listen," she said. "This place speaks. You have to hear it." He closed his eyes, focusing on the hum beneath the surface, the rhythm of the cave itself. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, a vibration that ran through the floor, through the air, into his chest. Then it grew stronger, and he could sense the stories hidden in every curve of the walls, every jagged rock, every shadow. He understood now why the ranch had chosen these women, why the mountain had kept him here, why every step had been a test. The youngest girl stepped forward, lantern light trembling across her face. "It's not just the land," she said quietly. "It's the choices we make, the courage we show, the trust we offer. You've endured the storm, faced the shadows, and followed when others would have turned back. That matters," the copper-haired woman added softly. "You've learned that the past is not gone. That memory shapes us, and understanding shapes the world around us. That is why we remain here, why we guard this place, why you were allowed to come." A rumble of approval, or perhaps acknowledgement, passed through the cave. He could feel the mountains leaning closer, the shadows retreating slightly, as if recognizing his effort, his courage. The storm outside began to ease, the wind weakening, rain softening to a gentle drizzle that pattered against rocks and trees. For the first time since arriving, he felt calm, not completely safe, but connected. Part of something larger than himself, the dark-haired woman led him to a small chamber deeper in the cave. It was lined with carved wooden panels, journals stacked neatly, and remnants of the lives the women had built. Here scraps of fabric, dried herbs, and photographs faded by time. "This is the heart of the ranch," she said. "The history, the memory, and the truth of what we endure. You see it now? Because you have earned it." He ran his hand over the carvings, tracing the patterns of mountains, rivers, and old homesteads. Each mark told a story of loss, of survival, of courage tested and proven. He realized the women had not only survived the mountain, they had learned it, understood it, and woven it into themselves. And he, through trial and fear and determination, had begun to understand it too. The youngest girl handed him one of the journals. "You must write your own story here," she said. "Not for the past, not for anyone else, but for yourself. That is the final test." He opened the leather-bound pages, blank but waiting, and took a deep breath. The storm outside had passed. The valley was quiet, peaceful, alive with a new light that touched the mountains and valley alike. He began to write, words flowing in a rhythm he hadn't known existed in him. The ranch, the mountain, the women, all of it, flowed into his sentences, capturing history, respect, and the lessons of courage, trust, and endurance. Time passed, though he could not say how long. When he finally set down the pen, he felt different, changed, stronger, and more aware of himself and the world around him. He understood the weight of the ranch, the importance of the women's vigilance, and the delicate balance of life and history they preserved. The dark-haired woman placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes softening. "You see now. You understand? And you have earned your place not as an intruder, but as part of this story, this land, this life." The copper-haired woman smiled, a rare warmth breaking through her usually stern demeanor. "The ranch will test you again, as it tests all of us. But you have proven that you can face it, respect it, and endure." The youngest girl's amber eyes glimmered. "And you are not alone. The mountain watches over all who respect it, and the women who guard it will guide you when the storm returns." They walked out of the cave together, the first light of morning stretching across the valley. The storm had left the air clean and crisp, the scent of pine and wet earth mingling in a way that made him feel alive. The ranch looked different in daylight, familiar and welcoming. No longer just a place of shadow and mystery, but of history, life, and possibility. He paused on the porch of the main house, taking in the land he had come seeking. The mountains rose around him, steady and eternal. The women stood nearby, watching him with a mixture of pride and quiet approval. He realized he did not need to conquer the land or bend it to his will. He needed only to live with it, respect it, and carry its lessons forward. "Will it ever test us again?" he asked, glancing at the dark-haired woman. "Always," she replied. "But every test is also a chance to learn, to grow, to live fully." "You have seen that now," he nodded, feeling a deep, settled calm for the first time in weeks. The ranch was no longer a mystery to fear, but a home to respect, a life to share, and a history to honor. And the women dark-haired, copper-haired, and ambered were no longer guardians to challenge him, but allies, teachers, and friends whose strength and wisdom he had come to trust. The sun climbed higher, spilling gold across the valley, illuminating the cabins, barns, and fields. The once abandoned ranch now thrummed with life, memory, and the promise of a future built carefully, patiently, and courageously. He turned to the dark-haired woman. "Thank you," he said simply. Though he knew words could never capture the depth of gratitude he felt, her lips curved into a faint smile. "Do not thank us. Thank the land. It has given you everything you need to see yourself clearly, to understand what matters, and to face the world with courage." The copper-haired woman placed her hand on his arm, steadying, grounding. "And remember," she said, "history is ours to honor, and life is ours to live. Every choice counts. Every moment matters." The youngest girl stepped forward, holding her lantern high, the soft glow illuminating her determined face. "You belong here now if you choose it. And we will be here to guide you, as we always have been, for those who respect the mountain and the ranch." Prompt to 151st. Duration: 8-second shot type. Wide environment. Abandoned ranch exterior. Leaning chimney, broken fence lighting, rising sun. Cool, warm mixed camera movement, pan left primary. Action: ranch revealed character S. A muscular Native American warrior with long black hair and tribal jewelry, always shirtless with a fit. Model-like, muscular build, small tribal tattoos, and tribal jewelry around his neck, dismounts, scans area. Lips tighten visual elements. Weathered wood, rusted gate color palette, brown, gray. Muted gold atmosphere, suspense particles, FX, dust. Wind transition out, cut technical specs, 4K cinematic, film grain.